And welcome everyone again to Design to Align Camp, a model for redesigning courses and community. And I'm going to hand it over to Micah and Anna.
Hi everyone, and good afternoon. Thanks for sticking it out on a Friday, late afternoon. We were just talking about that, and we're looking forward to interacting with you all today. I'm Mike Orloff. I'm a Dean of Distance Education and Technology here at Mount San Jacinto College. And then Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna Sterling. I'm the director of the Distance Education and Learning Technology Advancement Team, or Delta team. And so we do distance education support services. And you may have seen me a little bit ago. I was taking pictures because I am tweeting. So.
Great. So yeah, so we're talking today about our Design to Align camp that we ran one in the summer, and we're running more as we move forward. And we're trying to look at a model of how we can redesign courses, and specifically in community, and trying to connect people to build awareness of what's happening statewide and all the good work that's occurring across the state, and how can we do that locally at Mount San Jacinto College. So we're going to start off actually with a little something here. We're going to put some figures on a screen, and we'd love for you to take a look at these figures. And in the chat feature, if you have change it to all panelists and attendees, we will ask you to tell us what you think these three figures might mean. We'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
Nobody's got any ideas?
I'll say them. 7 to 10%, and that should be percentage points. Increase 4.9 percentage points, and 20% over 2. And so we're seeing some things here. I got Anita Crawley saying that the 4.9 increase is success in aligned courses. Dana agrees. Number of students taking online courses. Dropout rate, success rate, happy rate. The average scores, or increase in scores. 7 to 10% increase in students who complete courses when aligned. We'll give about 30 more seconds for people to throw up ideas. Lisa says something you're going to tell us about. Yeah, definitely. Yes, hopefully we would do something with it and not just leave it up there and just move right on. Although I've done that in the past. I've said, okay, great, thanks, let's move on. 20% retention increases in OEI aligned courses. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. You guys have some good guesses there. Some of you did have some of the elements correct, and we're going to jump through these really quickly. So basically, these are figures that we use in an effort to try to engage our faculty in the process of redesigning their courses. The first figure is a figure that we use locally, but as we've checked statewide, it kind of falls in the same boat. But for probably the last 10 years or so, on average, 7 to 10 percentage points less in the achievement data related to online classes versus face-to-face counterparts. What we were noticing for years on end was that no matter what it was, no matter what changes occurred, even if we got better as a whole, as a district, it seemed like our online courses tended to always be between 7 and 10 percentage points less than our face-to-face counterparts in the same course. So that was definitely something that was challenging, and that was all before OEI came about, and they introduced the digital ecosystem and different resources to help support that. And as we found out in the second figure here, as the research and planning group did some research on courses that were utilizing the digital ecosystem, aligning to the course design rubric, and using the different resources and strategies that were provided by OEI and @ONE, that in that sample, the courses that had the OEI treatment were, in achievement data, seen an increase in nearly 5%, percentage points, I should say, in achievement data in their online classes. So my feeling is, as a dean, as part of the consortium group that the OEI consortium gets together and they discuss things, I wouldn't be surprised that when they saw, when we provide the OEI digital ecosystem and the rubric and other resources, we noticed this increase of 5 percentage points. We want to see more courses that have that treatment because it just makes sense then. And so what was presented to us is, from the OEI consortium, was this idea of, we want to see 20% of your online inventory OEI aligned, using the different features and also, meeting the OEI Course Design Rubric over the next 2 years. So 20% over 2. So the 3 figures were 7 to 10% on average percentage points less in our online classes. And what we found was it was very similar in a lot of the schools across the state over that same time span. The RP groups study finding the nearly 5 percentage points in achievement data increase in online courses with the OEI treatment. And then of course OEI saying, hey, we want to see more courses like this, 20% over 2. We'd like to see 20% of your inventory over 2. So with that, we thought, okay, this will be interesting. OEI, Online Education Initiative. I saw that a question on there. And so we're thinking to ourselves, okay, this is going to be a fun yet daunting task, because at MSJC we've had online courses. We've been involved with online courses for 20 years, and we've had different models of how we supported them. At some points, felt like it was bursting at the seams with the different types of courses we were offering. And now we're trying to tell this group time to align to these things because we're seeing achievement data increases. And our hope is to be able to use that data to help support faculty in that process. But we also knew that it would be a challenge if we're running 300, 400 online courses sections, that it would be something that we'd have to have a good strategy for. And we knew by doing it one-on-one with our instructional designers, which we have, while that is effective, it would take quite a bit of a long time to make that happen. And so we had to come up with some strategies to better support that. And what we came to was a framework that could potentially help us build awareness through community, but also work with a variety and multiple faculty at the same time to redesign their courses. And as you'll learn a little bit later, inject some other things that could be helpful and could allow them to be more successful than maybe what they were used to. And so we came up with the summer camp as an immersive kind of experience where they get to participate in a program that allows them to come together with faculty and the like, spend a good amount of time during the summer over a 2-week immersive time frame. I'll let Anna kind of talk about some of that detail in a minute here. But and then they'd also not just physically come together, but they'd come together synchronously like we're doing right now, as well as asynchronously and interact in a hybrid format delivery of a camp. So, and Anna, I'll let you kind of jump in here.
Yeah, so as Micah said, can you go to the next slide, Micah? Okay. So we talked about how we're going to put together this immersive experience for our faculty. And so we came to, again, working with At One previously and working with faculty and seeing that they needed to interact with the rubric in a little bit more hands-on fashion. We decided that we would take a similar approach and really build out that immersive interactive opportunity for faculty to participate. And so we knew that we wanted them to come together and work together, because that's the other piece of it, is that while absolutely faculty can design their courses on their own and be aligned, we found that, when they're working together with other faculty, they are a little bit more involved. They have an opportunity to share with each other and learn from each other. And so we wanted to make sure we were giving them space to do that. So this camp that we designed it, again, our initial camp was over the summer. So it was 2 weeks intensive. They came to campus multiple days, and we're going to talk about that structure in a second here and what that looked like. But we really knew that we had to get the information out first, right? We had to get people excited about it and interested in it and let them know, yes, it's a lot of work and a lot of commitment, but there's a lot of reward as well. So what we did is we put together this promotional piece, and it was a trifold brochure, and we have some links here for you so you can actually check out the brochure. And then we have an info sheet that if you guys decide at the end of this you want to implement this, it's an editable, you can make a copy of it and modify it for yourself. And then we also have an application, which is what we went around and got faculty to fill out who wanted to participate in camp. So we purposely decided that we were going to limit camp to 15 individuals so that we would have a small cohort of faculty that would work together, that would allow us with our team to be able to give them small group and individual attention throughout this process, and also be able for us to manage the interactions between their small groups a little bit more effectively. So we did have faculty apply. So we took this promotional material and we shopped it around campus, like every opportunity. Like if there was a faculty meeting, we were there. If there was an all faculty meeting, we were there. If there was a professional development event, we were there. We went to committees, we went to, I carried them around with me in my bag like all the time. And anytime I would talk to faculty, I'd be like, here, let me give you this brochure about our camp that's coming up this summer. And we talked to them about the overall objectives of the camp and about how it was designed to really help them not only align with the OEI Course Design Rubric, but also an opportunity to look at aligning their course outline of record in the way that they were teaching their classes. And so again, we're going to talk about in a little bit that in a second here. So they went in and they filled out the application. It's a very simple application, and that application was really just asking them, what do they hope to get out of it? What do they think that they're going to improve in their courses, those kinds of things. And then we also asked them if they were currently teaching that course online. Because as Micah mentioned earlier, one of our goals was to get to increasing to 20% of our courses being OEI reviewed and having the OEI treatment. So we wanted to target courses that we were already offering online so we could reach that 20% goal. So we also worked with our Title V grant, which our current Title V grant was focused on enhancing our success rates in distance education for our Hispanic students. And so we worked with them to target courses that were high priorities for them as well. And we actually went out and solicited certain faculty. And then in collaboration with our Title V grant, we were able to offer a stipend for this camp. And so when we talk about the schedule in the next one, Micah. So this is kind of our tentative schedule. And so we really put together, again, like I said, a really intensive camp. So it was 40 hours of on-campus activities. So they had to come over 2 weeks for 40 hours on campus. We had 10 hours of asynchronous activities designed for them, and then 2 hours of synchronous meetings. So they had to meet with, as a group for one of those hours, and then individually with an instructional designer or distance education specialist, those kinds of things. So because of the number of hours, we very purposely designed it to be 52 hours, so it would be comparable to teaching a course. And so our stipend in essence was the same as a course buyout, or an average of what a course buyout would be. So for us at our institution, that was approximately $4,000. And again, we did this over the summer because we wanted to make sure that faculty could kind of look at it as an option of, I could teach a course this summer, or I could potentially participate in camp and relatively be receiving the same level of compensation for the same hours of work. So we were very strategic in that design. And then, to be honest, we probably could have come up with a whole nother 52 hours worth of content that we wanted to cover in the course. So we knew, though, with that 52 hours, we were very selective in the types of topics that we chose to make sure that we were aligning with the rubric. And then also, you see this little kind of ninja guy here sneaking in some other pieces of that. And what we mean by that is, again, this course outline of record, we have them do an activity we call the core crosswalk, or the course outline of record crosswalk. And that's really having them look at their course outlines of record and looking at the objectives on that course outline of record, and then really using a backwards design model to take those objectives and build out their actual course plan. So you'll see here that I actually have a link to a sample camp plan. And so if you click on that link, that's going to show you all of the topics for each day that we covered and how we took a backwards design approach and started with the objectives and then moved into talking with them about assessments and then moved into content design. The other piece that we kind of wanted to like sneak in the side door here with this is talking about just good learning theory. And, you know, as the California Community College system is kind of the only system of higher education or education in general that doesn't require you to have some level of teaching credential, we wanted to make sure that we were giving our faculty some of that learning theory as the foundation for why we were doing the things we were doing and the choices that we were making in the design recommendations, where those were coming from. So that's what you're going to see when you look at that camp plan, is the topics based on teaching theory, course outline of record, alignment, and then going into the backwards design process with looking at those objectives. Then, like, you know, we had them do the crosswalk, then we had them do a course plan, and then they started building content. So I don't know if, Micah, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, actually, you covered it pretty well. I think that the idea was we were looking for opportunities to incorporate things that often is maybe not discussed. And so we didn't want this just to be an opportunity to take what they currently have in place and try to redesign what they currently have in place to align with the OEI Course Design Rubric. Because we knew that there were challenges already with what they had out there. And this presented an opportunity for us to really examine what we're putting out in our online courses and to let the instructors really build an awareness on what they're building, how they're building it, and at the core, potentially into future design, as they design their courses into the future, they will take those theories or practices in consideration as they develop. And then the last thing was the Delta group that Anna heads up is relatively new, I would say, within the last 2 years. And to build a brand and to try to get faculty to become comfortable with coming to that group or coming to their Delta Center or getting support, we were looking for opportunities to really build that confidence and trust in that team. And so this presented a strong opportunity for that. But I think Anna really, you know, covered it when it came to, we were going to do what I love best with my chicken strips, is immerse them into the, you know, to the sauce. So that's what we had going.
And so, Mike, I saw a couple questions about like, how did you get this through to be able to pay this much money to faculty? Like, how did, you know, the administration buy into that? So I don't know if you maybe want to just address that kind of quickly.
Sure. So, you know, I don't know. No, I'm kidding. It's not easy. And I agree with you. We did have a lot of help because we had a Title V grant. And that Title V grant set out with a competitive, it had a competitive component where they were talking about how technology can enhance the teaching and learning experience for those populations. And so what we did was we used the funding from the Title V grant and aligned it up during a summer period when faculty were off contract anyway. And the way that we really sold it was, remember those figures we shared on slide 2, was kind of saying the idea of, you know, OEI, that online education initiative that provides all these services to us, they're realizing that that the tools that they're providing to us free are really helping change what's going on, especially from the RP group's findings. And so they want to put basically some more skin in the game on us. And basically what they're asking for is they're asking us to step up and design and redesign these courses to align with their rubric. And in doing so, that would allow, as an institution, us to continue to get access to these great resources for free. So what I did was I calculated what those resources would cost if they weren't coming free from OEI. And I think the sticker shock of seeing that made them feel like, use the grant money, let's try this out and see how it goes. And later we'll talk about other strategies, because obviously grant dollars are, you know, finite and they're not always available. And so what are some other strategies that you can do to move forward? We have a slide that we'll talk a little bit more about that.
And I also want to mention, there was a question, and I typed an answer to it, but I'll tell everybody else. So someone asked, was the course review part of the 40 hours that they were required to participate in? And actually, no. So the course review was the end product. So they had to not only do the 52 hours of participation, their payment for the stipend was actually also that then they had to, after completing the course, actually submit their course for review, and that they had to meet alignment at our local poker review level. I'll put that in quotation marks, local poker review, because that's going to be one of the things we talk about here in a minute. And that they met our local review process, and then they would get paid for their stipend. So it wasn't just a show up and participate kind of model. It was, they have to actually complete the attendance and submit their course to be reviewed against the OEI rubric to confirm that they actually applied all of the things that they learned during the camp, and actually their course would pass a local review for alignment. So those were kind of the two pieces of what was required to get the stipend. And that's another piece of kind of how we got a level of buy-in, is that there was an actual product attached to it they had to produce, and that we were reaching for those goals.
So some questions here. Generally speaking, how would you encourage those that possibly feel like their district would never buy into this, or you know, especially in terms of the compensation? What would be some words of wisdom or encouragement for that?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, because I would tell you that that's exactly the way I felt even before, was that we wouldn't have that kind of buy-in from administration because of the costs associated with that. So obviously the grant, like I said before, did help. What it does is it's like, so Paul LeBlanc, I think he's the executive officer at, South New Hampshire. He did a presentation once, and he said, well, the same question pops up. How do we innovate in a system that continues to put up barriers for doing that? And his answer is something that's always stuck with me, and that was, we got to find ways to innovate in the margins. And I know that sounds strange, but it's basically looking for ways to partner, resource, and grab resources from other locations and under other funding mechanisms to help jumpstart and seed, so that you can collect data. And then when you collect data, and usually get small samples, because obviously we're not going to continue to do this, and I think that's important to tell you up front, is it's not going to be something where every single person is going to get a redesign at a compensation level like that. This is the group that is what we would call the innovators, the real early adopters that are setting the tone. And then what ends up happening is, with the data that will demonstrate, we believe confidently that the data will demonstrate an increase in achievement data across the board, that it'll be something that will no longer just be, well, let's try it. It's going to be, this is what is required if we're going to put this out here as an institution online. And as an administrator over that area of distance education, I would let you know that one of the most important things to me is, if I'm putting out a product to the students, I want to make sure that if we know that there's high impact practices that are working, and we have an opportunity to incorporate them, and down the road, it becomes something that, as we innovate in the margins, it no longer is innovation once it becomes in the core. That's where we're headed. And so you have to have that vision, and you have to be able to say, I can see this in the future, but collecting data up front now, so that when I go back to the leadership and say, look, it's working. So we have to find new strategies of incorporating this. And as an administrator with, I hate to say it, but with right of assignment too, eventually it becomes something where we're going to, if the data shows what it is, which is the achievement increases, then why wouldn't we? So.
And I'll just add one last thing too, is that you have to look at also your strategic plans at your institution. One of the pieces at our institution is that we had in our strategic plan, one of our goals was to enhance the quality of our distance education. So our institution as a whole was invested in this goal of making sure that our students who are in distance education are taking our online courses are getting that quality education just like our campus students. And so we were able to, again, kind of lean on those strategic goals to say, hey, this is an institutional goal. We're just leveraging our additional resources to help move the needle to make these goals a reality. So.
We have a few more questions, but what we'll do, if it's okay, Sean, we're going to go ahead and kind of move to the next slide, and we'll get back to these. We promise.
So how do we do this? So what did it actually kind of look like? So again, we had this in-person camp that was going on, but we also supported that with, obviously, our Canvas course where we had all of our resources and where we were modeling what we were discussing, right? So we were making sure that the things that we were providing to the faculty in the camp they were seeing it in application in the online piece of the camp that they were interacting with. So we made sure that we were listing, the objectives, and we were showing good design and chunking our materials and using different types of media and all of those pieces that were part of the rubric requirements. We were making sure we were doing that in our course. But we couldn't have done that only, right? We wanted to make sure that our faculty, again, we're trying to kind of sneak in all of the other pieces, right? And so we wanted to make sure that our faculty were also taking advantage of the tools that we have to help them with design in conjunction with working with our instructional designers. And so the first one of those is CD Labs design tools. And so if you're not familiar with this, this is the tool that we use that allows us to create some of the elements that you're seeing here, like the buttons on the home page, those little icons, that very clearly defined heading structure, all of those kinds of pieces. And so we use that tool extensively to build out a lot of templates for the faculty to use when they got to the content creation point. That were kind of, again, twofold. One, they had good design structure, and they were also fully accessible. So this allowed us to get out one of our challenges, which we're going to address here in a second, which was helping our faculty make their courses accessible. So by giving them these design templates that kind of drew them in because they looked sleek, we also were able to address the accessibility. And so again, that's using the CD Labs design tools. So the first icon you see there, CIDI Labs, CD Labs design tools. And again, if you're interested, I'm happy to do a whole separate, kind of conversation with you about that, or you can go to their website and check it out. It's a really great tool. Another tool from the same company, from CD Labs, is called Tidy Up. And this tool was super awesome and allowed us to work with the faculty in. It allows you to actually go into your file, see all of your files and pages in your course and delete things in mass. And so it allows you to, in essence, tidy up your files and your structure. So this was really great because, again, we were having our faculty go through everything that was already existing in their course, and we had one of our activities in our session was we called it the digital hoarding activity, and we talked about how it's so easy to amass digital resources and what that can look like to our students. And so we had them do this course inventory, and then we had them use this tidy up tool to actually go through and get rid of the things that they actually weren't using in their class. And then we also introduced, this was our kind of first introduction to using Canvas Studio on our campus. So we adopted Canvas Studio in July 1, and then this camp took place in the middle of July. So this was our first faculty group actually getting hands-on use with Canvas Studio. And so we actually built in activities in the camp using the Canvas Studio product. So again, they would have that opportunity to interact with the tool as a student and then add that into their course. And on the next slide, when we talk about some of our findings, we're going to talk a little bit about sometimes when they're not familiar with tools, what they do. And so we wanted to make sure, again, that they had those interactions with the tools so that they wouldn't be apprehensive about putting them in their courses. And then that last tool listed there you see is You Do It. I think many folks are familiar with You Do It. If you're not, this is a tool that helps with checking and remediating accessibility issues in your course. And so we actually are using it for, again, to help with accessibility. We're self-hosted, but you can also get that. Actually, CD Labs has the ability to host that product for you as well. So I don't mean to be like a CD Labs commercial, but they have been an instrumental tool in us being able to help our faculty really design courses that takes away some of that time that they would have to spend learning how to do all the design elements and really get them back to focusing on looking at the objectives of their course and building content that aligns with those objectives. So again, we're looking at designing with aligning with the OEI Course Design Rubric, but we're also really looking at aligning with their course outline of record as well.
And I don't know if I trust Anna all that much. She always says, I'm not really trying to push CD Labs, but I wonder if she has stock options in them because she talks about them all the time. And all in jest, but the truth is, the tools that we've seen come out of CD Labs have been so supportive and effective, specifically for our ID team. And so I think when our ID team is built, to use these tools to help support faculty, I think, again, going back to that idea we talked about before, which is building trust and confidence from our faculty in our Delta team was so important. And so we were able to kind of build that trust, I think, by being able to incorporate and use those type of tools.
And I think the other piece that is important about letting you know that we use CD Labs and how extensive it was in our design is that, again, you can go and download this whole design camp from Commons. I put it up there. It's, we're all about the share, right? But just know that when you download it, it will not look like this because you would have to have our CD Lab templates available to actually see this. So again, if you down the road decide that you want to, implement this camp at your local or a version of this camp locally, and you decide you're also going to get CD Labs, I'm happy to share our template code with you so that you can have it so it looks like this.
And she's happy to receive the kickbacks from CD Labs for sending you that way.
I wish. If I was getting kickbacks, maybe I wouldn't. Just kidding.
All right, so so we ran this camp, and like you said, it was rather intensive, and there was a lot of things that come from a first experience, a pilot experience like that, and so we wanted to share some of our key findings with you as part of that process when we held this back in July. And one of the things I want to share, I'm gonna share a couple, and then I'm gonna let Anna share the rest. But I'm gonna share the one that was really interesting to me. Was we decided to do that course outline of record crosswalk, and when we did that, what that requires is the faculty to A, grab their course outline of record that's in our curriculum system, and then B, pull the learning objectives that are identified in that, as well as look at the actual outline of record, and then start to identify what they currently have in their course that meets or has an assessment for meeting and measuring whether or not a student will achieve that learning objective. And what we found was a good amount of our participants either had challenges with, I didn't even know that was an objective in the course outline of record and I haven't been teaching to that, or I have these things that I'd rather teach, is what I heard a couple times, or this is really, really, truly important, and so I need this to be a part of the course, and so I'm willing to forego other things, or I know these are in the course, but I don't have any type of measure or assessment to try to connect those things. And so it was interesting because as we thought about that, we thought about things like, okay, well, what are your students thinking when they're going and registering for this course and they see a course description and things that it says it'll cover, and maybe it doesn't line up. And of course, again, the curricular process that says that we bless this at this local institution to be exactly what the students are getting, and we'll articulate that or transfer that to another institution as we transcript it. And so it was really interesting to see that, but there was also an enlightenment too, because I think a lot of the faculty are like, oh, wow, it's interesting. If I actually address this here, this objective, then I can pull this stuff out because it's being addressed in this objective. And so we started to find those type of interesting draws. And it was just a little shocking, I guess, to us to see how many of the participants were unfamiliar or not in alignment with the course outliner record. And so we were thinking, okay, here's our opportunity to help them in the design process. So we do a backwards design model if we can get them to at least agree that these are the objectives. And they said, well, I don't want to teach that. And I said, well, if that's part of it, then you need to go through the curricular process so that you can update the course and make sure that it's still doing what we need it to do. And some other teachers that were a part of the process were like, well, that doesn't line up with what my book's chapters have. And so it was just interesting. But we want to share that with you here because I think that's a good finding, because it's probably, I would say, you might be experiencing that at your local institutions to some degree as well. Let me see. It's okay if I share the formative, summative?
Mm-hmm.
So we started to talk about formative and summative assessment, and again, there was an interesting take that some of the people in the group, as we shared topics about multiple and varied assessment and the effectiveness of utilizing that practice, that a lot of people were enlightened to the fact of formative assessment and its purpose. Its purpose to help, allow the students to be able to then eventually, as they scaffold, get to a summative assessment to verify that and measure that the student has achieved the very outcomes or objectives that the course set out to and the instructor set out to accomplish. And so it was interesting when a lot of them were like, I don't put that much formative assessment. And we asked why, and they said, well, because that puts a lot more work on me. And we were kind of like, okay. Well, then as you kind of think about what's the purpose here, is the purpose, trying to find, we told them that we got to find the balance between work and economies of scale, and also trying to accomplish what the outcomes of the, course outline record says, but also student success, obviously, in the end. We're trying to see our students succeed. So, Anna, you want to share a little bit more on those?
Yeah, sorry, somebody's printing here. And then the last thing we found is that, again, because we didn't have a lot of our faculty don't have foundation in pedagogy or andragogy principles, that when we shared that information with them, because we made them do some very specific activities about learning theory, a lot of them said, I've been teaching for 10 years, 15 years, and this is the first time that I've actually been exposed to these learning theories from a very, specific standpoint of how I'm using them in my classes. And so it was just kind of one of those things where the more we talked with them, the more we realized that this foundational teaching knowledge is critical to what we do, and that we have to make space for that to be part of what we're doing. Because overall what we found is the things that when they weren't familiar or they weren't used to it, they reverted right back to what was comfortable for them, right? And so we would say, oh, you need to have formative and summative, and they'd be like, yeah, but I already have this test. We're like, right, so that might be one piece of it, but you might want to also do some interaction and other things. And so that idea of just looking at your course from having, picking a learning theory and trying to apply that in your course, or just having that general idea of learning theory and how people learn, and even just the sense of, if you've been teaching for a lot of years, what works in your class, but then reading about it and reading the actual theories that that reinforce why that behavior is happening sometimes allows you to go, oh, now I understand why this is working and now how I can enhance it because I understand that principle a little bit better. And so that kind of information, we got that feedback a lot from the faculty when we were doing those learning theory modules or learning theory discussions with them, was like, oh yeah, now I get it. Now I understand why that thing that I kept trying to do wasn't working in my class because it goes, against adult learning theory principles or those kinds of things. So that's kind of the information that, again, the more we share with them, if they weren't familiar, they would just revert back to doing what was comfortable. So we did have to constantly kind of push them out of that as well and make sure that they were trying to do other things. And I talked a little bit earlier about Studio. Studio was one of those things too. So I know we have a lot more to cover and we have like 3 minutes to do it. So we're going to fly through those.
So what are some of the challenges that we faced when we went through this, this first summer camp? The time commitment format in our feedback from our surveys was a big one. They saw obviously that large commitment of the 50 plus hours was a lot, but to put it into a 2-week immersive experience where they're basically with us all throughout the week, whether it's face-to-face, online synchronously or online asynchronously, they shared that was a pretty tough thing. And many of them where we kind of communicated, you should take this instead of doing a summer teaching class, they decided to do it on top of. And so often what would end up happening is their summer was no longer their summer anymore. They became in bondage to us in terms of the work that we were putting forward them. So we started to think about for our next camp what we're going to be doing when it comes to maybe some modality shifting and format. And we talked about strategies for doing that where it'll be maybe a little bit less of the intensive immersive timeline in 2 weeks. It's going to be maybe over 4 weeks. And so I think that's what we're doing in this next model. Is that right, Anna? It's 4 weeks, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to do 4 weeks. And obviously that's going to split it up a little bit more. And we're going to give a little bit more flexibility to the face-to-face component where during the summer it was you were here 3 out of the 4 days of the week and then 1 day fully synchronously. So, and then on timing, it was a little tough because the only time we could really find where we can get the instructors to participate and still get it done was like basically the 2 weeks before the fall semester started. And so I think we had a week in between. And so what ended up happening is they did these 2 immersive weeks, had some time to align their course, and they already had to get ready for fall. And so what we noticed that there were some tensions there where they had to prepare for fall, but they also were trying to align their courses. And so there were some challenges. So we'd be looking at timing in the regular semesters as well to try to see if there's a better format or to not get them so tied up with having to prepare for another semester at the same time that they're redesigning their course. Resource turnover. So when we set this out in the summer, we had 3 ID specialists that were working with us and really building out this program. They were going to be some of our presenters. And then 2 of them decided to up and leave our program. And it was tough because they also went through the poker training course with that one, and we got the local Senate to approve that those ID specialists can be our peer reviewers. So we were all excited because they were going to be a part of that. And then they decided they had greener pastures and they decided to go other places. And so that kind of put us in a little bit of a pickle because now we had to pull from other areas to try to provide the review support, which was okay. We figured it out. But it's always tough when you lose resources in the middle of something, and so it's a challenge with that. I'm not going to mention any names. There might be somebody that's helping us on this session right now, and it doesn't rhyme with Don Malcarcel. So, but we know Sean is just doing some great stuff, but it was a little difficult when you lose people in the middle of it because you're trying. It just knocks you off of your game and what you're trying to do. And then the accessibility. Obviously. We have accessibility reviews, and the current program that they teach you in the poker program is they show you how to review A through C. And then you have a D review that still needs to take place. And so you need resources locally either to do that, or you need to be able to take advantage of the A team that @OneOEI provides. And we have resources, but with that turnover, that kind of put a challenge as well. So we were able to get some other resources to come in and help us with that. But it was something toward, another like last minute change that we weren't expecting. So, yeah, so those are some of the challenges that we faced. And then Anna, on the future considerations, I'll just jump in real quick and then you can share the last two there. Like we said, restructuring the time commitment. We still think that there's enough to be covered that actually we don't necessarily think that we should be cutting the hours so much, but the format can definitely be looked at differently. One of the things that we're going to try this time, which is strange, and I'm telling you right now, I feel really awkward about it, but we have some faculty that are going through another camp. It's not in summer, it's starting next Monday. And we're doing a fall camp. And we have some faculty that are truly at a distance. And one of them is an adjunct and has a full-time job. And so we're going to be delivering 2 synchronous sessions of the same thing on the same day so that people can jump into 2 of the different sessions and potentially get the information. If they can't attend either one, we are going to provide an opportunity for them to review an asynchronous video of it. Now, I'm not happy about this, but at the same time, when it went out, I said, okay, well, here's what we'll do. We'll put that video in Canvas Studio. And in the Canvas Studio video, we have the ability to check the reviewing analysis and make sure that people are consuming the video before they come back to our ID specialist and tell them, I need a lot of help because I'm not prepared for this. And hopefully they've gone through the content and stuff before. So that's kind of what we're looking at with there. And then did you want to talk a little bit about the reassignment versus extra duty? Go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's again one of the other things is that we really wanted to try and see if we could figure out a way to do reassignment versus an additional pay, because we, like Micah said, we had some faculty who instead of doing this in lieu of teaching, they taught and then did this on top of teaching. And overwhelmingly the feedback was that didn't really work. And so we have a lot of people who are going through the fall camp right now who are also doing that. They're teaching a full load and now they're adding this on top. And so that's one of the pieces that we're taking into consideration about how that might look in the future. And then the last piece is, again, lots of conversation about equity and making sure that we're enhancing equity in all of our courses. And so that's the other piece for us, is making sure that in our camp that we're putting a bigger focus on equity and equity alignment. We're actually reviewing the Peralta Equity Rubric for adoption at our local institution. That's going through our shared governance processes right now. So those are all things that we want to make sure that are part of our future camps, but we are continuing to do camps.
And so I'll just quickly say that when we talked about innovating the margins, there's a lot of different ways that you might find some seed funding to do that. We started with the Title V grant, and now because we also got a CT Pathways grant, we're incorporating some of that for our CT programs. As we talk about the equity rubric and how we can incorporate that in, that incorporates, that gives us the opportunity to chase after some funding in, with the student equity and achievement, or the C dollars. We have a base budget with distance education, and that can always help out a little bit as well. And then we have a flex/professional development fund that we can also chase into. So those are some options if you're thinking about, no one will, they won't pay for this here. A lot of times seeding with the categoricals is a great way to collect data and then present to the leadership like it works. And this is why we should consider this. And then that point she made about reassignment is so huge, because I think that will also help faculty not be overwhelmed as they're doing a redesign. And then they can go forward with taking a 20% load instead of teaching a class, working on redesigning their courses that then will impact every semester after that. And I'll let Anna quickly run through this. So.
Yeah. So I do just want to say, I know we're a little bit over our time, so I am going to kind of quickly go through this, but these are just showing you guys some before and afters and talking about, our faculty's perceptions at the end there. So I want to be respectful for those people who I know maybe need to jump off. Thank you so much, but I do want to go through this for the people who want it, and I'll be quick. So really quick, I want to say, so this is an example of a course before the person went through camp. And this is, the overview for their course, and you can see it's good. I mean, it's got some of the items that we would normally look for when we're doing a course review. If you're familiar with the rubric, it's got an introduction, it's got some due dates, it's got some headings, it's chunked up a little bit. Those probably aren't accessible, right? So it's good, but then after they went through camp, then you can see now, if you go to the next slide, their course is great, right? And it looks amazing. It's completely aligned in all the different areas. And I pulled out just a couple ones to show you. You can see now that introduction is way more robust because they're making the connections between the content and the objective. They're explicitly stating the objectives that are covered in this unit. They're putting out that to-do list. They're not, if you notice on that previous slide, all of the information was delivered in like pages, right? Those little preview icons, those are external documents. Now they've moved all of that stuff into pages in Canvas so that it's more easy for the students to get to. They're using different types of assessments, different types of media. If you go to the next slide, you'll see they've taken all of their resources now, and instead of it just being a list of links, they've actually taken their resources, they've brought in some videos from other places. They've actually created some of their own presentations with narrated videos and captions. So they're taking all these different pieces from the rubric and they're pushing them together in a more purposeful design instead of just kind of what we would call vomiting information at the students, right? Really taking into consideration. And you can see here also they're using some of those templates that we provided to them. So the course has a consistent, cohesive look and feel to it. It looks purposeful. So again, it's not that they weren't, already doing great stuff. They just took it to the next level. And so we definitely asked our faculty to share with us overall how they felt about camp. And so we've included some of those here. And I just want to touch on that. Some of the things that they said were just so amazing to them. They talked about it, having an impact beyond just the design part, getting to work with faculty they don't usually get to work with. Creating that course design map to link their objectives was amazing. That's not something they had done before. All of those pieces came back around. All the things that we kind of knew from our experience of working with faculty, the faculty were reinforcing that and telling us that in their reflections.
And I'll answer one quick question out here. Paula was asking, are the tabs accessible? Can you move between them using a keyboard? And so one of the great things, Paula, with that CD design tools really allows us the opportunity to even use in the design tools some features that check for the very, things of WCAG 2.0, double level A. And what's interesting about it is because it's using CSS, custom style sheets, it's actually really just a bunch of information on one page. It's just the design is shifting it into a different types of organization. But it would be the way the readers read it and the ability for it to jump. It's using the same heading types that you would use even if the page didn't have those design levels. So yes, so to answer your question, the answer is yes. They are tab capable for navigation. And so just to end, guys, we just wanted to say thanks for being here. That was a much longer session than we expected, but I think you guys had some rich questions and we wanted to be sure to answer them for you. We leave our information up on the screen here and we'll put it in the chat window. This is the Delta group at Mount San Jacinto College and they're doing some great things. And we miss you, Sean. We were just teasing you earlier, who was a part of our Delta team as well. And this is all available, as I think Stacy put in the chat window, all the resource links, including this presentation. So we thank you guys. And if you have further questions for us, feel free to send us an email. But we look forward to seeing you at another At One event soon.
Thanks, Micah, Anna. Miss you guys. And just like you said, the information is available. I think we have the link up there again. So hopefully we can see some more networking happening so other institutions can benefit from your experiences. So thanks again. All right, thank you all for joining us today and continue to have a great Innovate day and a great weekend also. Take care.
Take care, guys.